you just, you literally, after you get home, it's almost like you flop down on the couch and you're like, I don't have anything to do. And, when your kids are growing up, you're happy that they're able to have a good life, but you can't tote them anywhere. You always have to rely on someone else to be able to take them to their baseball games, football games. And then with the medicine in you, there are times that I just felt so tired, I didn't want to go to a baseball game or a basketball game. So I also missed out on those kind of aspects too with my kids. And so that's why I took the next steps. I was willing to get all the testing, and I was like, I want to have the surgery. My name is Terri, and I consider myself at this point in time in my life an epilepsy survivor. Um, when I was growing up, I was fine until I turned 20 and had a seizure in a college classroom where I slid out of a chair. Found myself in the ambulance, had no idea why I was there. And I had a second one in the same class. So at least I told people maybe I really didn't like the class. But that's when I was put on medicine at age 20. Then as I grew older, all of a sudden the medicines just stopped working. I have what is called, they've now got new terms for it, but they were the pet mall seizures. And the first medicine I took was Dilantin. And for a while, it held them down. And so I was still able to do, I was able to work and drive myself to work and stuff like that. But basically, it was the doctor that was on campus. I had not actually gone out to see another neurologist. I just saw a doctor and he put me on Dilantin, and I know that is a very old medicine, but it worked for me for a while. But then I guess this happens to a lot of people. Your body gets used to the medicine, and so it also stops working. But I had the pet mall seizures, and then they started happening more often. And I was at work and I might have 3 or 4 a day. I had left temporal surgery, which your memory comes out. But every time I had a seizure, your brain is actually, in some essence, getting the shock. And so there's so much about my kids growing up I don't remember. And that sometimes upsets me because my husband will say something like, well, do you remember this? And I'll be like, no. Well, wait, do you remember that? And sometimes I'm like, I wish he would not even ask that question. So epilepsy does a lot. Besides physical, it's also mental. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, how much it can cause a lot of problems. But it's not just the person with epilepsy. It's the whole family around it. If I need a ride, well, who's picking mom up tonight? Well, I can't. I got to do this. Okay, well, who can do this? And so the kids are trying to figure out who's the one that can pick mom up at work. And so that's taken away from their life. I don't think people see it that way, but it does. The first one is known as the left temporal lobe surgery, and that's because your hippocampus is actually almost shrinking. And the hippocampus is where you're on the left side of the brain. That's where your short-term memory is. So that's why it starts getting really bad. And so what they do is they start the cut from here and go all the way down over here. And they pull basically this part of your brain skin down and go into your skull. And then they remove the hippocampus. And I don't know if you can tell, but I've got a dent here. That's after the surgery was over and they stitched me back up. So I have a dent on that side of my face. After my first surgery, everything seemed fine for about 2 years. So I started driving very, very short distances, like to and from work. Then all of a sudden I started having seizures again. And I was like, Oh, and I make a joke out of it, because they were coming from the right side. And I was like, yeah, it got left out of the first surgery. So, it decided to kick in. I knew in previous testing they saw that I had something on the right, but I just had so many more seizures starting from the left side. So I went in, and the RNS system, we looked at it. We looked at some other devices, and I looked at my husband, and I'm like, doing it. So I had my second surgery last November, because as much as it changed my life to being helped, I wanted to be able to still go forward in that direction. And I was willing to go ahead and have a second surgery. So I've had two, one on the left and one on the right. So all I can say, my life has changed so much, and I want to help other people. The right side, it's a small incision, because all they're doing is putting a device in, and the device sits on top of your skull. It has two leads, and they're like spaghetti. So they go to where they find the focal point seems to be, and they put that lead right there at the focal point. So it senses you're having a seizure, and so it pushes up against it. The opposite of like a pacemaker. So the company name is NeuroPace, and I figured that one out. Sometimes it's just logic. They call themselves NeuroPace because it does work like a pacemaker, only it shocks against the seizure. But like I said, and you go into the doctor, and I tease people, they can crank you up if you need higher power. And that's what they do apparently with the pacemaker. So you go into your doctor, and like I had my last seizure a few months ago, where I felt the end of the seizure, where I got really, really tired. And so when I went in to see the doctor, he turned me up. And like I tease people, yep. And because it is a computer system, technology is up there. I don't like the idea, though, that in about 10 years, they have to go back in to replace my battery. I joke, I said, maybe one of these days I can charge myself every night, but the device is here, and so I have a little lump, but it sits on top of your skull, and then the leads go into the actual brain where they see your focal points are at. It'll be on the medication that makes you so tired. And yeah, you might want to cut this one out in a little while, but it does something to your sex drive. But the memory and being so tired, and you just really don't want to get up and do stuff. It doesn't make you active in any way. Since I had my first surgery, I've lost a total of 60 pounds. But all the medicines I tried, Dilan, Topamax, I'm on Lamictal, Keppra. I tried all of them. At least for a month or two, but then some of the stuff it would do is because I know it just makes you so tired, but they weren't working. I would have about 4 or 5 pet ball seizures a day. And at one time I was on 3 or 4 medicines. And because you're on that many medicines, the biggest one, though, is how sleepy it makes you. And I know that some of them, though, make them angry. So it does something to your emotional part of your brain, too. And then just having where people would tell me they would just go to bed and just start crying. And other people would get so angry they'd be, but at least their family knew what was happening. So they had to go through all the medicines. But I've been through so many medicines, and I know I'm not going to be able to tell you all the ones I've been through. I could always send you a list. But, and I know that some of them can give your child cleft palate. So when I was pregnant and me and my husband would go in with the doctor, and as soon as I saw the one for cleft palate, I'm like, none of those. So it affects you physically and what can happen to your children if you want to have a family. So it's better if we can find a way to help people where they don't have to be on medicine. You know, if there's other things that they can do. I almost lost my first son, and that's because some of the medicines that were used for the seizure control, and I was on three or four, can make your embryo sac thinner. And so I got a tear in my sac. So I was bedridden for about 26 weeks. And then what happened was that apparently I got an infection. And so I had to rush into the hospital, and I had a C-section. And my husband didn't tell me this because I was sick too, because I'd gotten the infection. We almost lost him. He was in NICU for about a week, and I had been taking steroids to get his weight up, sense of what, happened to me. And so he was born at 5 pounds and 5 ounces. He came home at 2 pounds. But he was blue in the face. But like I said, my husband didn't tell me why this was going on, and they didn't think he was going to survive through the night. But he did. And so I think I was on Topamax then. I think I was on Lamictal. But I know I was on like 3 or 4 medicines with each pregnancy. But in some aspects, like I said, we sat with the doctors and I was like, well, I'm not taking those. None of those. I don't want the idea of a child with cleft palate. I know nowadays that if a child is born with cleft palate, they take him immediately into surgery. But I had a friend growing up who had cleft palate. I could see her scar. And I just I'm not touching those medicines, not when I'm pregnant. I could only say completely seizure free, and it's because my last one was 3 months ago. And I've seen the doctor, and they, like I said, they cranked me up a little more. But I do not have the pet mal seizures at all. I have the ones because the left temporal lobe surgery took care of literally all my pet loss. And those are called focal points, I guess, also now. That's the new term. And I guess I had a major focal point on the right side. And so by putting the RNS system in on the right side, that is where we're basically trying to find where my leads need to be strong so that it will prevent. But the last one was about 3 months ago. And like I said, I felt the end of the seizure. And I put a computer device up against me. And like I said, I tease everyone. I download, 2 or 3 times a week, and that data goes to the doctor. And I have something I'm supposed to put over the device if I know I'm having the seizure, to put right up against it. It's like a magnet piece. And so that helps track it, so that when the doctor sees all the data, it helps, because everybody's brain is different. So when you're able to see what happens to this person when they're having a seizure, and we're able to track it, we know how to work with it better to prevent it. The only thing I don't like is, like I was teasing, in 10 years, I have to get my battery replaced. But my life has changed so much for the better. It really has.